Hello, everybody. This is Reading with Jimmy, and I'm Jimmy. We're reading the Meditations of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius Antonius. This is Meditation 5, and we're reading the translations from George Long. Let's begin, shall we? Let me make this a little bit bigger for everybody. Meditation 5. Number 1, in the morning, when thou risest unwillingly, let this thought be present. I am rising to the work of a human being, and then am I dissatisfied if I am going to do the things for which I exist, and for which I was brought into the world? Or have I been made for this, to lie in the bedclothes and keep myself warm? But this is more pleasant. Dost thou exist, then, to take thy pleasure, and not at all for action and exertion? Dost thou not see the little plants, the little birds, the ants and spiders and bees working together to put in order their several parts of the universe? And art thou unwilling to do the work of a human being? And dost thou not make haste to do that which is according to thy nature? But it is necessary to take rest also. It is necessary. However, nature has fixed bounds to this too. She has fixed bounds to eating and drinking, and yet thou goest beyond those bounds, beyond what is sufficient. Yet in thy acts it is not so. But thou stoppest short of what thou canst do. So thou lovest not thyself, for if thou didst, thou wouldst love thy nature and her will. But those who love their several arts exhaust themselves in working at them, unwashed and without food. But thou valuest thy own nature less than the turner values the turning art, or the dancer the dancing art, or the lover of money values his money, or the vainglorious man his little glory. And such men, when they have a violent affection to a thing, choose neither to eat nor sleep, but rather than to perfect the things which they care for. But are the acts which concern society more vile in thy eyes and less worthy of thy labor? As in all the meditation, they require multiple readings of the same meditation in order to walk away with something, of use to you, of thoughtfulness to you. So he's saying in the morning when you rest, and when you rise unwilling, it's so hard to get out of bed. Think about this, that you're rising to do the work of a human being. And of course, you need to, rest a little bit, but you're not born to rest. You're born to do things. And that's what he's saying in this first meditation, on number 5. Number 2, how easy it is to repel and to wipe away every impression which is troublesome or unsuitable, and immediately to be in all tranquility. Sometimes you get the impression that Marcus Aurelius is talking to himself, don't you? Because this is kind of a diary. And in number 2, he's saying it's easy to wipe away anything that's troublesome, to be tranquil, right? Tranquility is part of what he seeks. Number 3, judge every word and deed which are according to the nature to be fit for thee. And be not diverted by the blame which follows from any people, nor by their words. But if a thing is good to be done or said, do not consider it unworthy of thee. For those persons have their peculiar leading principle and follow their peculiar movement, which things do not thou regard, but go straight on following thy own nature and the common nature and the way of both is one. Again, requires several readings. You can pause Jimmy's reading and reread it again until you get what he's saying. Judge every word and deed which are according to the nature to be fit for thee. So just judge what people are telling you, right? Number 4, I go through the things which happen according to nature until I shall fall and rest, breathing out my breath into that element out of which, this is interesting from the point of view of relationship with the earth. I shall fall and rest, breathing out my breath into that element out of which I daily draw in it, and falling upon that earth out of which my father collected the seed, and my mother the blood, and my nurse the milk, and out of which during so many years I have supplied with food and drink, which bears me when I tread on it and abuse it for so many purposes. Number 4 is about the earth. I go through the things, breathing out my breath into the element of which I daily draw in it, and falling upon the earth. And it's his relationship with the earth. It's interesting, isn't it? Number 5, thou sayest men cannot admire the sharpness of thy wits. You see these little hyphens here? Do you see the hyphens? Let's mark those hyphens. Those are long pauses in his meditations, and you see him throughout here. Here. So he's really writing, and he draws that line to pause. Thou sayest men cannot admire the sharpness of thy wits. So somebody's saying they can't admire how sharp he is with his wits. Be it so, but there are many other things of which thou canst not say, I am not formed for them by nature. So I may not have a sharpness of wit, but there's a lot of other things that I don't have. Show those qualities then, which are altogether in thy power. So project the qualities in you. What are those qualities? Sincerity, gravity, endurance of labor, aversion to pleasure, contentment with thy portion and with few things, benevolence, frankness, no love of superfluity, freedom from trifling, magnanimity, superfluity, an unnecessary or excessively large amount or number of something, no love of lots of stuff, freedom from trifling, magnanimity, kindness and generosity towards someone after defeating them. Dost thou not see how many qualities thou art immediately able to exhibit? Isn't it, like I told you, he's talking to himself. So people say that he doesn't have a sharp wit. Okay? People say things about you and I about us, but we have all these other qualities, and he lists his qualities, in which there is no excuse of natural incapacity and unfitness, and yet thou still remains voluntarily below the mark, and you still think, this is self-esteem here. Let's write that down. Self-esteem. Whoops. Let's write that down. Self-esteem. Or art thou compelled through being defectively furnished by nature to murmur, and to be stingy, and to flatter, and to find fault with thy poor body, and to try to please men, and to make great display, and to be so restless in thy mind? So he's basically arguing with himself. Are you so shallow to be stingy, to flatter? This is all about how you view yourself. No, by the gods, but thou mightst have been delivered from these things long ago. In other words, grow up, Marcus. That's what he's telling himself here. Grow up. Only if in truth thou canst be charged with being rather slow and dull of comprehension, thou must exert thyself about this also, not neglecting it, nor yet taking pleasure in thy dullness. So I wrote a note here. Imagine yourself talking to yourself like this. Only if in truth you cannot be charged with being rather slow. Remember, he's after the truth. Number 6, one man, when he has done a service to another, is ready to set it down to his account as a favor conferred. Another is not ready to do this, but still in his own mind he thinks of the man as his debtor, and he knows what he has done. And a third, in a manner, does not even know what he has done, but he is like a vine which has produced grapes and seeks for nothing more after it once it produced its proper fruit. This, ladies and gentlemen, this is a profound statement. This is found in the Gospels. This is found in many, many texts. So you've got 3 people doing this. You do a favor for someone, and you mark it. You set it down on you keep tabs on it. Another one doesn't keep tabs, but he always remembers he did him a favor. While the third guy who does the favor, he doesn't even think about it. He just does it and goes on with his life. Which one are you? As a horse when he has run, a dog when he has tracked the game, a bee when it has made the honey, so a man when he has done a good act does not call out for others to come and see, but he goes on to another act, as a vine goes on to produce again the grapes in season. There's the dash. See the dash? So, in other words, he's basically saying, man, when you're doing good, just do good, go on to the next thing. Don't dwell on it. Don't show off. Everybody got to see what I did. Must a man then be one of these who in a manner act thus without observing it? Must a man then be one of these who in a manner act thus without observing it? Yes. Pause. See, he's basically arguing with himself in writing. Isn't this interesting? But this very thing is necessary, the observation of what a man is doing. But we have to really think about what we're doing. For it may be said it is characteristic of the social animal to perceive that he is working in a social manner. And indeed, to wish that his social partner also should perceive it. So in other words, when you're acting, you want to act because you're a social animal, and you want others to notice that you're doing these things, right? It is true what thou sayest. There's a note here from Jimmy. Who is thou? I want you to think about that. It could be you. It is true what you say, in which case, who is you? It is true what you say, but thou dost not rightly understand what is now said. And for this reason, thou wilt become one of those whom I spoke before. For even they are misled by a certain show of reason. But if thou wilt choose to understand the meaning of what is said, do not fear that for this reason thou wilt omit any social act. You're not doing this so that you're noticed for others. I've known many people who do things in order that they know and everybody can see how good they are. It's what you do when people don't see you that really defines your character. Do you understand that? Number 7, a prayer of the Athenians. Rain, rain, O dear Zeus, down on the plowed fields of the Athenians and on the plains. In truth, we ought not to pray at all, or we ought to pray in this simple and noble fashion. So he obviously writes down a prayer, and then he tells himself after the pause, here's the pause, right? Pause. In truth, we ought to not pray at all, or if we do pray, it should be simple prayers like this. Asclepius was a Greek and Roman god of medicine. Pardon me. Number 8, just as we must understand when it is said that Asclepius prescribed to this man horse exercise, or bathing in cold water, or going without shoes, so we must understand it when it is said that the nature of the universe prescribed to this man disease, mutilation, loss, or any else of the kind. So he's basically saying in this sentence that nature is like our doctor and prescribes for us disease, mutilation, blah, blah, blah. For in the first case, prescribed means something like this. He prescribed this for this man as a thing adapted to procure health. Talking about Asclepius. And in the second case, nature, it means that which happens to or suits every man is fixed in a manner for him suitably to his destiny. So George Long writes a note in here, a footnote. In this section, there is a play on the meaning of the Greek word, happens. So, the doctor prescribes for health, nature prescribes what? For our destiny. For this is what we mean when we say that things are suitable to us, as the workmen say of squandered stones and walls, or the pyramids, that they are suitable when they fit them to one another in some kind of connection. For there is altogether one fitness, and George puts in brackets, harmony. Remember, these brackets are George's brackets. He wants to give us sometimes choice of words, but he gives us. So he didn't write harmony. George is telling us he meant harmony. For there is altogether one fitness. That's all Marcus wrote. And George is saying what he meant is harmony. And as the universe is made up out of all bodies to be such a body as it is, so out of all existing causes, necessity, George puts in destiny, is made up to be such a cause as it is. That if I read that and that sounds confusing, let's read it again. As the universe is made up out of all bodies to be such a body as it is, all right, so it's we're all part of the universe. So out of all existing causes, necessity is made up to be such a cause as it is. Necessity is just one of many causes, and that's probably what makes up a cause. You see what I'm saying? He's saying it's all part of the same stuff. And even those who are completely ignorant understand what I mean. For they say it brought this to such a person. And then George puts in these words. Marcus wrote it brought this to such a person. This then was brought and this was prescribed to him. You see, Marcus is grappling with nature. What causes these things? What causes illness? Why does a doctor prescribe this for health? And he's grappling with the meaning of the body in relationship to nature. Let us then receive these things as well as those which Asclepius prescribes. In other words, let's receive illness just like we would receive, a prescription from Asclepius. Many, as a matter of course, even among his prescriptions, are disagreeable. But we accept them in the hope of health. Castor oil used to be a prescription when I was a kid. My mother would give us castor oil to help us, to cure us. And boy, did that taste like crap. Let the perfecting and accomplishment of the things which the common nature judges to be good be judged by thee to be of the same kind as thy health. In other words, death is a part of life, illness is a part of life, getting old is a part of life. And as so, accept everything which happens even if it seems disagreeable, because it leads to this, to the health of the universe and to the prosperity and felicity of Zeus. George put the universe here. Accept what happens to you. That's part of Stoicism. For he would not have brought on any man what he has brought if it were not useful for the whole. This is a hard concept to understand. For he, who's he? Pronoun Zeus. Zeus would not have brought on any man what he has brought if it were not useful for the whole. In other words, whatever's happening to you is happening because it's useful for the whole. What's the whole? Mankind, right? The world. Neither does the nature of anything, whatever it may be, cause anything which is not suitable to that which is directed by it. Things happen for reasons, and they're good reasons. For two reasons, then, it is right to be content with that which happens to thee. Sometimes it sounds like he's talking to himself, to Marcus himself, and sometimes it sounds like he's talking to us or to other people. And that's the nature of the meditation. It's like a diary. For two reasons, it is right to be content with what happens to thee, to you, to me, to us. The one, because it was done for thee and prescribed for thee, and in a manner had reference to thee, originally from the most ancient causes spun with thy destiny. And for the other reason, because even that which comes severely to every man is to the power which administrates the universe a cause of felicity and perfection, nay, even of its very continuance. For the integrity of the whole is mutilated if you cut off anything, whatever, from the conjunction and the continuity either of the parts or the causes. Don't mess with Mother Nature. Everything that's happening is happening for a reason. So accept it. That's what basically he's saying. And thou dost cut off as far as it is in thy power when thou art dissatisfied. So when you're dissatisfied, you're really acting against nature. So you should be satisfied with everything. Everything, Jimmy? I'm just saying, if you're going to understand Marcus Aurelius, if you're going to understand this guy, you have to go into his mind and his meditations and understand that. And he's basically saying, no matter what happens to you, you should be satisfied with it. And in a manner, tries to put anything out of the way. So when thou art dissatisfied, and in a manner, try to put anything out of the way. If you try to, this is not right. If you try to fix something that's happening, does that mean everything, Jimmy? Aren't we here to improve ourselves? You are. But think about this. Just think about what he's saying. That's his philosophy coming through. Be not disgusted or discouraged nor dissatisfied if thou dost not succeed in doing everything according to right principles. But when thou hast failed, return back again to be content if the greater part of what you did, what thou doest, is consistent with man's nature, and love this to which thou returnest. And do not return to philosophy as if she were the master, but act like those who have sore eyes and apply a bit of sponge and egg, or as another applies a plaster or drenching with water. What the heck is he saying here? He's basically saying, don't get don't be disgusted, discouraged, dissatisfied. If you can't do everything right, if you fail. But when you have failed, go back and be content if what you were trying to do is consistent with your nature. In other words, are you violating your nature? have you violated your nature? If you haven't violated your nature, go back to what you do that's consistent with your nature and love it. Love what you're doing. Do not return to philosophy as if she were the master, but act like those who have sore eyes. It's a temporary blindness, so put some sponge and egg on your eyes. For thus thou wilt not fail to obey reason, and thou wilt repose in it. Repose in reason. And remember that philosophy requires only the things which thy nature requires. But thou wouldst have something else which is not according to nature. So sometimes you want something that's not according to nature, and that's where the problems happen, right? Hyphen. See the hyphen? Sorry. It may be objected. Why? What is more agreeable than this? So he pauses here and he said, well, wait a minute. What is more agreeable than this? And then George tells us what I'm doing. Hyphen, dash. But is not this the very reason why pleasure deceives us? He's arguing with himself. You can figure out what the heck he's talking about by just thinking about something that you do. Right? I eat oatmeal or whatever. It may be objective. What is more agreeable than this, than eating oatmeal? But is not eating oatmeal the very reason why pleasure deceives us? That you love oatmeal, right? So if you love something, you're being deceived, he's saying. And consider magnanimity, freedom, simplicity, equanimity, generosity is magnanimity, evenness of temper, piety, are not more agreeable? For what is more agreeable? What is more agreeable than wisdom itself? When thou thinkest of the security and the happy course of all things which depend on the faculty of understanding and knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy understands that this is tough reading. This is tough reading. But tough reading makes you tougher. I assure you, spending the time reading like we're doing with Jimmy, reading these meditations, will toughen up your spirit, will make you think about why you're here on earth. What are you doing here? What the hell are you doing here? Why are you wasting time? Is this a waste of time, reading the meditations? Some of you have already dropped off. I could see it from the visit. We monitor the people who visit this website. Some of you never came back after the first meditation. But that's okay. You have to understand, you have to be ready for this stuff. It's like when I tell people, well, Jimmy, who's your favorite author? And I always say Dostoevsky, and they start reading them and they can't read them. Well, you have to be ready to read them. I couldn't read them when I first found out about them for many years. I tried to read them in high school, and I didn't know what the hell I was reading. You have to be ready for him. And maybe you're not ready for Marcus Aurelius. So that's why I'm taking my time to prepare you so you can get ready and go back and reread him with me. You understand? For example, what is more agreeable than wisdom itself when you think about security and the happy the course and depend on the faculty of understanding and knowledge? There's nothing more agreeable than wisdom. But what is wisdom? What is wisdom? We can talk about that for an hour. Number 10. Things are in such a kind of involvement that they have seemed to philosophers, not a few, nor those common philosophers, altogether unintelligible. So things seem unintelligible. Nay, even to the Stoics themselves, they seem difficult to understand. I was just telling you this. I didn't read ahead. I was just telling you this. Maybe I had to read it to mark it. In all our ascent is changeable. He talks a lot about opinion, how everything is opinion. All of our assent is changeable. For where is the man who never changes? Show me the person that never changes. And yet, if you've been reading with Jimmy for a while, one of the central questions about all of us is, can we change? Can we change? Marcus asks, pardon me, I take a sip of coffee. Where is the man who never changes? We all change. We're all a river. You can't put your foot in the river in the same place. Carry thy thoughts then to the objects themselves and consider how short-lived these objects are and how worthless, and that they may be in a possession of a filthy wretch or a whore or a robber. It's not about your possessions. It's not about objects. Then turn to the morals of those who live with thee. And it is hardly possible to endure even the most agreeable of them, to say nothing of a man being hardly able to endure himself. I don't know why I didn't mark that. Turn to the morals of those who live with you, and it is hardly possible to endure even the most agreeable of them, to say nothing of the man being hardly able. I can't even stand myself. This, I don't know, this is a profound admission, isn't it? I can't stand anybody. Did you ever get to that point in your life? I can't stand anybody, including myself. Wow. In such darkness, then, and dirt, and in so constant a flux, both of substance and of time, and of motion, and of things moved, what there is worth being highly prized, or even an object of serious pursuit, I can't imagine. So when you're in that dark place, what is worthy of being highly prized? He cannot even imagine anything. But on the contrary, it is a man's duty to comfort himself and to wait for the natural dissolution, and not to be vexed at the delay of the dissolution, but to rest in these principles only. The one, these are the principles. Nothing will happen to me which is not conformable to the nature of the universe. And number two, the other one, that it is in my power never to act contrary to my God and demon. For there is no man who will compel me to do this. And therein lies the lesson, ladies and gentlemen. So when you're in that dark place and you can't stand everybody or anybody, oh, I'm sick of people. Oh, I'm sick of myself, right? He's basically, Marcus, what do you think he's saying? He's experiencing this himself, right? On the contrary, it is our duty to comfort ourselves and to wait for natural dissolution. To wait for what? Natural dissolution. And not to be vexed. Don't be mad. Don't be ticked off at the delay of the dissolution, but to rest on these two principles. Number one, nothing will happen to me which is not conformable to the nature of the universe. I don't know if you believe that. You don't have to believe that, but if you're going to understand Marcus Aurelius, you have to understand that. You have to believe that now, that that's what he believes. Nothing happens to him unless it conforms to nature of the universe. And the other one is that it is in his power never to act contrary to his God and his demon, his soul. And there is no man who can compel him to do this. In other words, you're your own boss. You decide, you bring yourself out of darkness, which is why, if you think about suicide, most people with suicidal thoughts are in this dark area right here, ladies and gentlemen. They can't stand anything around them. They can't stand themselves. That's a dark place. I don't know if you've been in that dark place. Jimmy's been in the dark place. And Jimmy didn't even know this beautiful wisdom right here. No man can compel you to stay in the dark place. Think about this. Number 11. About what am I now employing my own soul? What the hell am I doing? He says. On every occasion, I must ask myself this question. What am I employing my own soul? And inquire, what have I now? What have I now in this part of me which they call the ruling principle? What am I doing? And whose soul have I now? That of a child, like wine, or of a young man, or of a feeble woman? No offense. Or of a tyrant, or a domestic animal, or a wild beast? The Island of Lost Souls, H.G. Wells. Great movie. Charles Laughton was in the original. He changes animals into men. There's a great scene where Bela Lugosi's on the island, and they're all like half men, half beasts, and he's standing on the top of the mountain with a bullwhip. What is the law? Will shall not kill, says Bela Lugosi with all the others on the island below him. He whips the whip. What is the law? What is the law? Are we not men? But they were beasts, right? Do you act like a beast? 12. What kind of things those are which appear good to many, we may learn even from this. For if any man should conceive certain things as being really good, like prudence, temperance, justice, fortitude, when you hear the word things, I don't know if you think of those words, but he did, prudence. Look him up. Look him up. He would not, after having first conceived these, endure to listen to anything which should be not in harmony with what was really good. In other words, once you learned this, you couldn't stand listening to any type of BS. But if a man has first conceived as good the things which appear to many to be good, he will listen and readily receive as very applicable that which was said by the comic writer. In other words, experience dictates what we think is good and what's not good. I told you before, I don't know what these little marks are by George. Thus, even the many perceive the difference. For were it not so, the saying would not offend and would not be rejected. This is George telling us, while we receive it when it is said of wealth and the means which further luxury and fame, as said fitly and wittily. We'll go on then and ask if we should value and think those things to be good. What things? Wit, luxury, fame, wealth. To which after the first conception in the mind, the words of the comic writer might be aptly applied. That he who has them through pure abundance has not a place to ease himself in. So if you have these in abundance, you don't have a place to ease yourself in. What the hell does that mean? See the question marks? These are things you should think about. What is he talking about here? We're all guided by experience, right? The experiences we have as we grow, as from a child, from a baby to young adult into adulthood. The things around us shape us. They shape us. So if you're shaped by luxury, you think this is what's good. Is it good? Now, don't forget, he's the emperor, right? He's got a lot of money. He's got a lot of responsibility. 13. I am composed of the formal and the material, and neither of them will perish into non-existence, as neither of them came into existence out of non-existence. Every part of me will be reduced by change into some part of the universe, and that again will change into another part of the universe, and so on forever. I forgot the astronomer's name, but we are the stuff that the stars are made of. This is his belief here. This is Marcus. I'm composed of material things, formal things. Neither will perish to non-existence. They will live forever. And by consequence of such a change, I too exist, and those who begot me, and so on forever in the other direction. For nothing hinders us from saying so, even if the universe is administered according to definite periods. This is George adding those brackets. Marcus is actually, don't forget, he's always at war when he's writing this. Death is always in front of him. And he's saying to himself that he's composed of these things, that he will live forever, just like everybody before him lives. It just changes into another part of the universe. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to believe this, but you have to understand it and appreciate it as he talks to himself about what will happen to him should he die in combat. This is an amazing man, amazing man. Number 14, reason and the reasoning art. That's George telling us what he's talking about is philosophy. You don't have to believe that. Reason and the reasoning art are powers which are sufficient for themselves and for their own works. They move from a first principle, which is their own, and then they make their way to the end, which is proposed to them. And this is the reason why such acts are named catharsis, or right acts, which word signifies that they proceed by the right road. So he's talking about how reason reasons. Catharsis down here is the process of releasing and providing relief from strong or repressed emotions. Catharsis. That's an Aristotelian word. Aristotle. That's what happens in tragedy. That's why you read classic literature. Number 15. None of these things ought to be called a man's, which do not belong to a man, as man. Whew. Say that 5 times. These things, are not required of a man, nor does man's nature promise them, nor are they the means of man's nature attaining its end. Neither then does the end of man lie in these things, nor yet that which aids to the accomplishment of this end. And that which aids toward this end is that which is good. So he's talking about things here, right? None of this stuff matters. What matters is good. G-O-O-D, good. Besides, if any of these things did belong to man, it would not be right for a man to despise them and to set himself against them, nor would a man be worthy of praise who showed that he did not want these things, nor would he who stinted himself in any of them be good, if indeed these things were good. But now, the more of these things a man, things is interesting, it's a word right here. It's almost a pronoun. A person, place, or thing. A thing can be anything here, right? So think about that. Things, possessions, gold, silver, money, houses, property, right? Things. But now, the more of these things a man deprives himself of, or of other things like them, and even when he is deprived of any of them, the more patiently he endures the loss, just as in the same degree that he is a better man. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? Confucius used to have the saying, if you don't expect anything, you'll never be disappointed. In this case, Marcus Aurelius is telling us these things, right? The more of these things you deprive yourself of, wealth, fame, whatever, they don't have to be physical things. They could be fame, right? Whatever. The more you can endure, right? he is deprived, or when he is deprived of them, the more patiently he endures their loss. If you never had it, you never had it to lose. Number 16, such as are thy habitual thoughts, such also will be the character of thy mind. You see the two exclamation points here? Such as thy habitual thoughts are, such also will be the character of your mind. For the soul is dyed by the thoughts. Dye it then, color it, with a continuous series of such thoughts like this. For instance, that where a man can live, there he can also live well. But he must live in a palace? Well, then he can also live well in a palace. And again, consider that for whatever purpose each thing has been constituted, for this it has been constituted. And towards this it is carried. And its end is in that toward which it is carried. In other words, it was created for this, it's for this, and where the end is, there also is the advantage and the good of each thing. This is a complex thought. Read it again. Pause me and read it again. Now, the good for the reasonable animal is society. For what we are made for, that we are made for society has been shown above. There's a footnote here. It is not plain that the inferior exists for the sake of the superior. Is it not plain that the inferior exists for the sake of the superior? But the things which have life are superior to those which have not life. And of those which have life, the superior are those which have reason. Ladies and gentlemen, this is unbelievable, right? Isn't it? Starts out by saying the way you think, you're habitual. If you hang around negative people, you're going to be a negative person. So he says, color your thoughts like this, that where you can live, it doesn't matter where you live. You know, you live well. Wherever it is, live well. And then he talks about this, for the good of the reasonable animal is a society. We are made for society. And that the inferior exists for the sake of the superior. You can't have a superior without an inferior. But things which have life are superior to those which don't have life. And those that have life, the superior are those which have reason. I can't tell you any more than that. Number 17, to seek what is impossible is madness. Isn't that the truth? And it is impossible that the bad should not do something of this kind. To seek what is impossible is madness. And it is impossible that the bad should not do something of this kind. In other words, bad, keep bad. It is the bad who seek. It is impossible that the bad should not. It's like a double negative sometimes. Right? Freud said, trying to do something that's impossible is not just madness. It'll drive you, you'll be a neurotic the rest of your life. To seek what is impossible. On the other hand, Browning said, a man's reach must exceed his grasp, else what's a heaven for? It's complicated. Life is complicated. Number 18, nothing happens to any man which he is not formed by nature to bear. The same things happen to one another, and either because he does not see what they have happened, or because he would show a great spirit, he is firm and remains unharmed. It's a shame then that ignorance and conceit should be stronger than wisdom. I don't know if you believe that, That's actually a Christian thought, that God doesn't give you anything that he doesn't think you can take. So it's a shame ignorance and conceit are stronger than wisdom, because wisdom means you understand this. I didn't say you have to believe it. I'm saying you have to understand it. Things themselves touch not the soul, not in the least degree, nor have they admission to the soul, nor can they turn or move the soul. But the soul turns and moves itself alone. And whatever judgments it may think proper to make, such it makes for itself, the things which present themselves to it. So he's a big fan of the word soul. That's your demon inside. That's you, your essence, your soul. Nothing can touch you, right? They don't have admission to your soul. They can turn or move. Nothing can turn, nothing. But the soul moves itself. In other words, you determine what affects you. You do. And that's the truth. In one respect, man is the nearest thing to me, so far as I must do good to men and endure them. But so far as some men make themselves obstacles to my proper acts, man becomes to me one of those things which are indifferent, no less than the sun or wind or wild beast. That's a cocky statement, right? The nearest thing to him, right? In one respect, man is the nearest to him. So he's got to do good things, but some men make themselves obstacles to my proper acts, to what he believes he's doing good. So he becomes indifferent to them. Now, it is true that these may impede my action, but they are no impediments to my effects and dispositions, which have the power of acting conditionally and changing. For the mind converts and changes every hindrance to its activity into an aid. The mind changes everything to help itself. And so that which is a hindrance is made a furtherance to an act. In other words, it's really not a hindrance. I can make it a furtherance. And that which is an obstacle on the road helps us on this road. Profound. Obstacles, right? Duke Ellington. A problem is a chance to show your best. An obstacle on the road helps you on the road. So there's no such thing as an obstacle. It just helps you when you're on the road. That's an unusual thought, but it's a true thought. I can tell you from business. When problems arise, it's not only a chance to show your best, they actually help you down the road to wisdom. In other words, you have to have problems in order to have solution. Right? It's the yin-yang thing. Number 21. Reverence that which is best in the universe. And this is that which makes use of all things and directs all things. And in a like manner, also reverence that which is best in thyself. And this is of the same kind as that. For in thyself also, that which makes use of everything else is this. And thy life is directed by this. What's this? Those darn pronouns that he uses, right? This. What is this? What is this? Go back. Reverence what is best in the universe. This is best in the universe. And this is that which makes use of all things and directs all things. What is this? What's best in the universe? Sorry. What is best in the universe? And in a like manner, also reverence that which is best in yourself. And this, the best in yourself, is of the same kind as that. Got to keep track of these pronouns. For in thyself, in yourself, that which makes use of everything else is the best. and thy life is directed by the best. Got it? Of course, you have to define what the best is. That's another 3 days. Number 22, that which does no harm to the state does no harm to the citizen. Don't forget he's the emperor, right? In the case of every appearance of harm, apply this rule. So anytime you see danger or harm, if the state is not harmed, neither am I harmed. But if the state is harmed, thou must not be angry with him who does the harm to the state, but show him where his error is. And therein lies the truth, not just of the state, but of other people. Can you imagine showing some of the politicians of today the error, their error, if you think they're doing harm to the state? What is the state? Number 23, often think of the rapidity with which things happen, which things pass by and disappear, both the things which are and the things which are produced. For substance is like a river in a continual flow, and the activities of these things are in constant change. And the causes work in infinite varieties, and there's hardly anything which stands still. Remember, Heraclitus had an influence on him. All things are a-flowing. This is very important. And consider this, right? Which is near to thee, this boundless abyss of the past and of the future, in which all things disappear. How then is he not a fool who is puffed up with such things or plagued about them, and makes himself miserable, for they vex him only for a time and a short time. Life moves quickly. This is, when something bad happens, it's only temporary. When something good happens, it's only temporary. This is an amazing philosophy, ladies and gentlemen. Amazing. Number 24, think of the universal substance of which thou hast a very small portion, and of a universal time of which short and indivisible interval has been assigned to thee, and of that which is fixed by destiny, and how small a part of it thou art. You're a speck in the universe. You're a speck. Well, Jimmy, I am not a speck. I'm a big rock. I'm a rock. No, you're a speck. Isn't it interesting? Number 25, does another do me wrong? Let him look to it. He has his own disposition, his own activity. I now have what the universal nature wills me to have, and I do what my nature now wills me to do. In other words, if someone insults him, if someone does him wrong, so what? I am who I am, and that's all that I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man, right? You remember Popeye? That was one of his songs, right? 26. Let the part of thy soul which leads and governs be undisturbed by the movements in the flesh, whether of pleasure or of pain. And let it not unite with them, but let it what? Part of the soul, circumscribe itself and limit those effects to their parts. But when these effects rise up to your mind by virtue of that other sympathy that naturally exists in a body, which is all in one, then thou must not strive to resist the sensation, for it's natural. But let not the ruling part of itself add to the sensation the opinion that it is either good or bad. Right? Don't let pleasure and pain, pleasure, right, guide you. Number 27, live with the gods. And he does live with the gods who constantly shows to them that his own soul is satisfied with that which is assigned to him, and that it does all that the demon wishes, demon meaning his soul, which Zeus had given to every man for his guardian and guide, a portion of himself. And this is every man's understanding and reason. Zeus gave us understanding and reason. This is a religious thought. This is if you're a Catholic, probably you'd be excommunicated for reading this. But you shouldn't. This is an interesting concept. God, Zeus in this case, has given to every man, for his guardian and guide, a portion of himself. That's an amazing thought. And this is every man's understanding and reason. Number 28. Art thou angry with him whose armpits stink? We had some people over the other day, and I was pre-reading this the meditation 5, and I brought this number 28 out, and I read it to them. I said, I don't think they know who Marcus Aurelius was. Not everybody does, but they were nice people. But I brought this out, and I said, I want you to listen to this and tell me what you think. And I read this to them, and they looked at me, rightly so, like I was crazy. Are you mad because someone has armpits that stink? And are you angry with him whose mouth smells foul? What good will your anger do you? He has such a mouth and he has such armpits. It is necessary that such an emanation must come from such things. But the man has reason, it will be said, and he is able, if he takes pain, to discover wherein he offends. I wish thee well of thy discovery. Well, then, I wish thee well of thy. He's like arguing with himself. Well, then, you have reason, and thy rational faculty stirs up his rational faculty. Show him his error and admonish him. And if he listens, you'll cure him, and there will be no need of anger. And then this is George, parentheses in there, neither tragic actor nor horror. I don't know what the hell that means. So you can ignore George's brackets. Don't let the little things upset you. That's what Marcus is telling you. You have reason with that, right? Not just with people whose armpits stink. Number 29. As thou intendest to live when thou art gone out, so it is in thy power to live here. But if men do not permit thee, then get away out of life, yet so as if thou were suffering no harm. The house is smoky. I'm leaving. I quit it. Number 2 here, Epictetus. There's a footnote here for number 1, and that was up here with the armpits, where George said, this is imperfect, corrupt, or both. There's also something wrong or incomplete in the beginning. He's arguing about he's struggling with his translation. He translated it literally and left it imperfect. Of course, there's nothing wrong with this translation. That's why I like George Long. He argues with himself unnecessarily. Shut up, George. The house is smoky, I quit it. Why do you think that this is any trouble? But so long as nothing of the kind drives me out, I remain, I'm free. No man shall hinder me from doing what I choose. And I choose to do what is according to the nature of the rational and social, animal. Number 30, the intelligence of the universe is social. Accordingly, it has made the inferior things for the sake of the superior, and it has fitted the superior to one another. What is superior? Things that can reason. So you see how it has subordinated, coordinated, and assigned to everything in its proper portion, and has brought together into concord one another the things which are the best. Sometimes we look around life and we don't really see that, right? We don't see that, what he's talking about, that everything is here for a reason, It's hard to see that sometimes when there's tragedy involved, or why did this happen? My wife had a serious car accident many years ago. Got hit by a car, broke her jaw in 3 places. And I remember telling her as she was wired in the hospital with the jaw shut that I don't know why this happened, but I know it happened for a reason. And of course, with the pain she was experiencing, she thought if she could think at all, she was in so much pain that, Jimmy's probably full of doo-doo. What the hell is he talking about? And it took probably 5, 6, 7 years for us to realize not only why it happened, but there was good that came out of that serious, serious accident. I'm not going to go into it now, but one of the things you have to realize if you're going to believe Marcus, or whether or not you don't believe him, is that things do happen, and how your reaction to the thing that happened is more important than the thing that happened. I don't want to repeat, maybe I should. Your reaction to the thing that happened, when it's happening, after it happens, is more important than the thing that happened. I'll go into detail on that in the analysis. Number 31. How hast thou behaved hitherto to the gods, thy parents, brethren, children, teachers, to those who looked after thy infancy, to thy friends, kinfolks, and thy slaves? Consider if you have hitherto behaved to all in such a fashion that this may be said of thee. Never have you wronged the man in deed or word. That's very important, isn't it? I'm taking a note now for my analysis. Pardon me. Okay. And call to recollection both how many things thou hast passed through and how many things that thou hast been able to endure, and that the history of thy life is now complete and thy service is ended, and how many beautiful things you've seen, and how many pleasures and pains you have despised, and how many things you can call honorable that thou hast spurned, and how many ill-minded folks that thou hast shown a kind disposition. In other words, this is how to live. Number 31 is how to live. Never wrong anyone in word or deed. Well, Jimmy, didn't you say Marcus Aurelius killed a lot of barbarians? He killed a lot of people? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Well, he harmed people. Indeed, he killed them. He did. He's defending his homeland. It's a contradiction. No, it's not. Think about it. Think about it. Number 32, why do unskilled and ignorant souls disturb him who has skill and knowledge? Why do they bother people with skill and knowledge? What soul then has skill and knowledge? That which knows beginning and end, and knows that the reason which pervades all substance and through all time by fixed periods administers the universe. In other words, don't let stuff bother you. Number 33, soon, very soon, you will be ashes or a skeleton, and either a name, not even a name, but a name is a sound and an echo. And the things which thou art much valued in life are empty and rotten and trifling, like little dogs biting one another, and little children quarreling, laughing, and then straightway weeping. But fidelity and modesty and justice are truth, are fled. Up to Olympus from the widespread earth. Hesiod. Okay, this is a Stoic. He's got a little footnote, I think he does, or not. Hesiod was an ancient Greek poet thought to have been active between 750 and 650 BC. So this is another indication of how well read Marcus Aurelius was. What then is there which still detains thee here? And if the objects of sense are easily changed and never stand still, and the organs of perception are dull and easily receive false impressions, and the poor soul itself is an exaltation from blood, what What to have good repute amid such a world as this is an empty thing. Why then do you not wait in tranquility for your end, whether it is extinction or removal to another state? And until that time comes, what is sufficient? Why, what else then to venerate the gods and bless them, and to do good to men, and to practice tolerance and self-restraint? But as to everything which is beyond the limits of thy poor flesh and breath, to remember that this is neither thine nor in thy power. What's this? All of this. It's not yours, and it's not in your power. And he puts a footnote here. This is a Stoic precept. The first part teaches us to be content with men and things as they are. The second, virtue, self-restraint of our passions. 34. Thou canst pass thy life in an equitable flow of happiness if thou canst go by the right way and think and act in the right way. These two things are common both to the soul of God and to the soul of man and to the soul of every rational being, not to be hindered by another. That's what these two things, not to be hindered by another, and to hold good, to consist in the disposition to justice and the practice of justice. And in this, to let your desire find its termination. So these two things here are really the right way to live. Number 35. If this is neither my own badness nor an effect of my own badness, and the common weal is not injured, then why am I troubled about it? And what is the harm to the common weal to everyone else? Number 36. This is like an admonition to himself. Number 36. Do not be carried along inconsiderately by the appearance of things, but give help according to thy ability and their fitness. And if they should have sustained loss in matters which are indifferent, do not imagine this to be a damage, for it is a bad habit. But as the old man, when he went away, asked back his footsteps, his foster child's top, remembering that it was a top, so do thou in this case also. That's a tough one. And when you're calling out on the Rostrata was a platform in ancient Rome where orators would speak. So when you're calling out on the Rostrata, hast thou forgotten, man, what these things are? There's the dash. Yes, he says to himself, but they are objects of great concern to these people. There's a dash. Well, wilt thou too then, see, he's arguing with himself. Wilt thou too then be made a fool for these things? I was once a fortunate man, but I lost it. I know not how. Hyphen. But fortunate means that a man has assigned to himself a good fortune. And a good fortune is a good disposition of the soul, good emotions, and good actions. And then George's note, this section is unintelligible, for many of the words may be corrupt, and the general purpose of the section can't be discovered. Perhaps several things have been improperly joined in one section. I've translated literally. Different translators give the section a different turn, and the critics have tried to mend what they can't understand. So George is saying whatever the hell he's talking about here is unintelligible. Is it? Number 36, is that all unintelligible? Let's read this part here. When you're standing out on the Rostra, pardon me, and has thou forgotten, man, that these things are? Yes, but they are objects of great concern to these people. I'm talking to people about something that they care about. And then he says to himself, well, will thou too then be made a fool for these things? Are you going to be stupid in front of these people because they care about them? And if you say, I was once a fortunate man, but I lost it, my fortune. I don't know how. But fortunate means that a man has assigned to himself a good fortune. And a good fortune is a good disposition of the soul, good emotions and good actions. What the hell are you talking about? I think we understand this. Right? That was number 5. You've been reading with Jimmy. This is Jimmy. And we've been reading meditation number 5 by Marcus Aurelius. You can watch more of the videos that take 5, 6, 4, whatever. And be sure to read other classics on my website. This is Jimmy. Email me, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Go out and be a better person.